If anybody's watching, don't pay attention to this part. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing. Is that it? It's doing something. Doesn't look like it's doing what I want yet. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. This is what I get for... Oh, no, I shouldn't be invisible. How do I turn that off? I don't know. How do I start it streaming? I feel like such an idiot. I've done it. It should be going. Oh, apparently I'm live. Well, let's hope that's right. Woohoo! Took a while for the thing to keep going. Well, um, this is Julie of 19 Nocturne Boulevard, the audio drama series. And, oh, don't show this again. I am going to be talking my way through making some audio dramas. And, I don't expect to have followers right away, but I hope that eventually I do. Where is that chat window? I want to make sure I can see chat if it comes up. Since, how do I do that? Do I just move it over here? Oh, no, that doesn't work. Oh, pardon me. Well, poop. I'll just have to keep a lookout until I can find out what I'm supposed to do with that. Anyway, I'll just keep checking back, I suppose, because I do want to make sure that part of this experience is going to be people getting a chance to ask questions. Oh, I better stop touching the mic. Stop touching it. Stop touching it. Anyway, this is the Audacity interface, as you can see on the screen, and it's a pretty basic. This is a free program at Audacity.com, and they do have a lot of different things you can add in or different plugins you can put in to do different functions. It actually is a pretty good program, all things considered. I mean, considering the cost. And it's what I've used to do all my audio dramas. I have occasionally sidestepped into something like Goldwave for specific room effects, but for the most part, everything I do in Audacity. Today, rather than starting out with a show, we're probably going to just take a tour around Audacity for a bit, and I hope that's going to be enlightening, especially since I suspect I don't have any people here watching just yet. But this should be the latest version of Audacity. I don't have the latest version on all my computers because I tend to customize a lot. And Audacity does have a lot of customizations you can do. And to that end, I hate upgrading because every time I have to re-enter all my customizations. We'll probably do some of that today. Now, these keys should be pretty obvious. I mean, they go all the way back to cassette players for those of us who are that old. Obviously, it's pause, play, stop, rewind, forward, and record. Down below that, I don't know what that is. I'm just not going to touch it. I am not a technical person. Now, this is actually a benefit for beginners because you're not going to get me giving you some technobabble that doesn't make sense. I'm going to express things in the simplest terms possible. And to that end, and what that means, I should say, is that, this is going to be hopefully really, really easy to understand. I may not be 100% right all the time. I'm speaking from experience rather than technical knowledge. So somebody technical might pop up and say, well, you got that wrong. I'm like, well, it works. Um, there's a lot of things that I have figured out through trial and error, lots and lots of trial and error. And honestly, I mean, if you look at my shows, I've won awards, I've been played in different countries. I mean, part of it is the writing also, but I wouldn't have won awards if I didn't have some decent skills at production as well. These here, this is your microphone, which I have no microphones set up for Audacity, and your input, your output, your speakers. Really, right now, Audacity isn't doing anything, and I'm actually going to change that to the headset. I think that's the right headset. Whenever you have something that's set up and you have to actually designate it through one of the menus, it will populate these drop down boxes so that you can choose it. So if you had, say, the laptop built-in speaker and not speaker, built-in microphone and another microphone like a headset or a proper microphone, I'm a bit of a snob being an audio drama person. I don't yet know what kind of sound quality I'm getting through these headphones. I'm sure it's good enough to hear me, but whenever you're doing audio drama or audio books, which I've also recorded over 800 for Audible, you the base quality of your original recording is way more important than anything else you're going to do forever. You can't polish a turd. I hope that's not too technical. The point is that if you get somebody who recorded on their phone and who is like, oh, is this going to be okay? You're like, no, I don't want to hear you record on your phone. If you're going to be recording on your phone, you're not going to be, I'm not going to match your voice up with other voices. Because with audio drama, a big part of what you're doing is trying to make people sound like they're in the same room, even though the recordings came from all over the world. And sometimes that's really, really difficult because, it's like everybody's got different qualities, they do different processing. I always ask for people to send files as recorded, period. Don't do anything. Let me clean them. Anyway, we'll get on to that as we go along. This little ruler, of course, is your seconds. And down here are things I don't use at all. Okay. Most things I leave at their default, I never touch. There's a few things here. These 6 keys here, and they're way goofier looking on the big screen than they are on my smaller screen. These are your cursor keys. If ever, shoot, I keep touching the mic. If ever you find when you click into a file, it isn't doing what you want, you check to see that you're on the selection tool, this cursor key. Because if you get into any of these other keys, it will do other things down here, but it won't do what you want. I'm going to open up a sample track just so that I can show you some of this. Where did I put it? Putty doody. Tell me I've got a sample track. Oh, it was on the thumb drive. Oh, this is why I should be more prepared when I start. Where is my drive? Not here. Okay. Well, let's pull one up. I've got so many different drives and so many different backup things around. It's insane that I shouldn't have something, but I am streaming from my new bright shiny gaming computer, which doesn't have anything on it yet. And as a result, I need to make sure I can import crap. Okay, get over there. Oh, of course, my never at the right angle. Damn it. I don't want to pull the whole thing down. Okay, blue to blue. Damn it, blue to blue. There we go. Yes, you can tell this is live because it's stupid. Alrighty then. What we've got is Gary. Let's see. I'll just pull up a raw file here. This is something old. I have no idea what it is except that it's an audio, something I recorded for Audible at some point. So, one of the first things that I use a lot, which I just did with a keystroke, except it's really slow, is Control F, which is also this key here. If you can see where the little circle is, it's the fit everything in window key. This is slow opening because it's opening from a backup drive. So I'm going to save it right the minute it does open. I'm going to save it into a local drive. That's one of the reasons I don't like to. I did not say play. So basically, you've got to make sure if you don't want to work on a backup drive if you ever have a choice, simply because let's go make a new folder. I'm gonna call it Twitch samples so I know what I'm talking about. And save this one. Oh. Okay. And then save this one there. Save project is from Audacity project, not an audio file. Now, I'm going to click to don't show this warning again, but this is actually a very, very important thing to keep track of when you're working in Audacity. When you save a file, it will save as an AUP file. So this one, for instance, will be 2_4.aup. Just like, .doc, .pdf, etc. AUP is an Audacity-specific file. It cannot be opened by anything except an Audacity program. You can't do anything else with it. In fact, it has a directory with the same name, and they two have to stay together, the directory and the file. Usually what I'll do is I'll make them their own subdirectory, and you'll see me do that in just a second, so that I can move that subdirectory anywhere with one move, rather than having to select the file and the associated directory. The best way to think about it is, for the AUP file itself, think of it as the spine of a book, and the directory contains all the pages. If you take the pages away, you can't read them because you don't know what order they're in. And if you take the spine away, it doesn't do you any good because you don't have any pages. They have to stay together. And that's basically what they are. Is, the AUP file tells all the little sound blocks in the other thing, in the directory, where they're going to go in the document. So this is why they mention here that, you can't just email someone an AUP file or something. So I'm going to go back down to Warehouse 13, which is my jumbo drive, go into my Twitch samples, and I'm going to make this, first day sample directory. And I'll leave it called 2.4. When I record, because I record so much for audiobooks, I just put the date on everything I do. I literally just name every raw file the date. That's why this is, because it's way easier to keep track of. You don't have to try and make up a name for every file. And by the time, all I do with those dates, these files, and I'll show you this in a minute, is I've got a number of different things recorded in one file, and I can, here, I'm going to do this again now. Come on. Fit whole thing in window. There we go. When you do this, this is this button, the fit in window, and it will put so that the longest thing is at the edge here, and then the 0 seconds is at the edge here. So It doesn't make all of them individually fit or anything. In fact, there's another track above that one. If you do Control Shift F, then it's fit vertically in window. And that also is very useful, so you can see everything at once. Now see here, I recorded a bunch of stuff, and probably some of it's corrections, and some of my, what I call the Atomic Julie's Galactic Bedtime Stories, some of it's for Audible, some of it might be a role I did in another show. But rather than make individual files for everything I record in a session, I'll just record down the page like this. Each of these is an individual track. I'd stop, start recording again, stop, start recording again, stop, etc. So, and I don't usually label them right off the bat because the way I've got my setup in my studio, the computer is behind me because I'm trying to keep the sound of the computer away from the microphone as much as possible. That's one of the many things that helps to make a better recording, is to keep anything like a computer, because a computer has an underlying hum. Some of that will come out with a high pass filter, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but a lot of it is just going to be in your recording, and you just don't want that, especially if your computer tends to run noisy, or it gets hot and the fan comes on a lot, or, I mean, anything like that. I find hard, I mean, I use a laptop to record, which tends to be a lot quieter than most desktops, and that does help too. I mean, there's a lot of different things that help make it an easier process, but the easiest thing is, rather than cleaning up afterwards, is to not make it sound bad in the first place. Anyway, so what I've got here is a bunch of different tracks. Let me see what I've got. Oh, that's a romance novel. So, I don't know if you can hear that. I'm assuming that some of this sound is. I'm going to take that one out. Let's see what this one is. Now, the nice thing about this, I mean, I could just go out here where there's no other sound and listen. Ouch. Let's see. Well, it sounds like it might be coming through. I'll have to look at that and see if it does. Now, again, I can do Control Shift F and make everything fit vertically again. There's a lot of shortcut keys that really, really help the editing process. Now, before I get to the shortcut keys, let me point out again, here are the cursor keys. When you click on these, or any of the shortcuts that activate those, because there are key combinations for them as well, things will change. Now, I mean, I know when I first started out, I could not figure out what this was. It's a manual voluming thing that I've never used, so I still don't know what it is, except that it does annoy me. The asterisk gives you a similar look. If you have this on, it just makes things bigger. It doesn't let you select things. This one, I'm going to Control F. This allows you to move files around, which is great, except you can move them right off the screen, which is bad. But it doesn't allow you to select things. And so if you ever find yourself unable to, double click and select something, or like, oh, wow, that's weird, what is that, then always make sure you come back to your little I-beam here so that you can double click to select, or you can highlight things, or whatever you're trying to do. That is the first thing to check whenever something weird happens. Another thing that happens that's very annoying is when you accidentally click on this when you meant to click farther over, and you make it look bigger. I'm a very visual person, and I have to compare things visually, and when things are out of sync, because clearly this is not comparable to what it was, it drives me crazy. But, you can accidentally click on this and make your track bigger. Right click. If you right click on it, right click until you've got 1010 at both sides, just to like anything else. Anytime in doubt, match it to another one. I recently was working with a track where somehow the hertz, it's the hertz, right? The hertz designation had been changed, and it sounded all wonky. It was something like this. So that was like playing it, and it was here's each track has its solo key. So it's like I sure hope you can hear that. I really am not sure how that's going, but anyway, um, so and but the way to figure out what's right is you look at all the other ones and you make it the same. You look at a correct one, obviously, and figure out how to fix it. So I mean, I may not know what that number means necessarily. I kind of do, but I do know how to fix it. Again, like I said, not technical. Let's look at this box over here. On each track, you'll see this. You got a box. Now, you got a click down box. You've got a close box. Now, that will actually delete the track. Don't do that unless you actually want to delete the track. And always remember, Control Z, undo, is your best friend. A lot of the keyboard shortcuts are exactly the same as they are in most generic word-based things. So you've got Control C for copy, Control V for paste, Control X for cut, and Control Z for undo. There are other keys that are very handy, but those ones are at least consistent across many different platforms. Now, if we go in here, and I think I pointed this out in my sample run because I was just gibbering away, but it is very important to remember. Now, one of the things about that differs between different sound editing programs is that Audacity can backtrack. You can back up a lot. I mean, I could sit here and go Z, 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 and all those things I've done already go away. You can do it for quite a while. But, and there's a big but, and this is not a big but, we like big butts, this is a bad but, is, that was terrible, I'm sorry, is that once you close and save once you save and close a file, it is frozen. It starts again at 0. You know, it's like if you counted like every single thing you did was a number and you could back up for most of those numbers, well, as soon as the file is closed, it zeroes out the number. You can't back up when you reopen a file, you can't change it. You can't back it up again. Some programs, some of the more expensive programs, allow you to keep to what they have like a static history, or they are able to keep the history so that even when you closed it and opened it again, you could back up through things you did in a previous iteration. I think that's possible. You can't do that in Audacity, so you got to make sure you do what you know what you're doing when you close it. Make sure you've got it where you want it, and you're not going to need to undo things. Now, that's generally pretty simple, and actually, I have a tendency to take great pains not to have to deal with that. I save multiple copies at different parts of the editing process, and we'll find out more about that when I get into doing actual editing. But to me, that's very important. I'm going to get rid of this one again. Actually, I'm going to get rid of both the long ones. We're just going to deal with some short ones here. I have a lot of things I do that are specifically to avoid problems that I've encountered in the past. And they're simple things generally, but they're like safety protocols. And I know that Audacity has changed some things since then so that they're not the issue they used to be, and yet I still do them out of habit. So I'm going to be teaching them anyway because I don't always know which ones have been fixed or altered and which ones haven't. But I do encourage everyone to go to the Audacity forums. They are great. If you ever have an issue, a problem, something that just doesn't make sense, there are some super people answering questions on the Audacity forums. And again, this is a free program, so these are people who are just putting in their own time to help out. It's really great of them. So, okay, back to the box over here. Yes, I do tend to digress a lot. That's why I'm looking forward to answering questions. Ooh. Nope, no chat yet. That's okay. As I said, I would not be surprised if it's a few episodes before I start picking up anybody to help to actually answer questions for. Okay, so on the box, the obvious things are the mute, and when it mutes, it goes beige, and it's gray, ecru, and the solo key. Now, solo makes it so all you hear is this track, you know, and the mute key just means everything else plays except this one. Pretty simple. One nice thing is if you mute this and then you solo it, it auto mutes everything else. You can go straight from mute to solo. Hey, why didn't it stay mute? Okay, they changed that. Well, crap. Okay. I don't like that. Because a lot of times when I'm working between two different files, I'll keep one muted so I can just solo it and mute and solo and mute rather than have to. Anyway, point is, that's annoying. These sliders are going to come into play when we start doing balancing of multiple tracks. This is the left and right slider, which makes the sound in the playing in the track go to one side or other of the headphones. I always recommend using headphones when you're editing audio dramas or even audio in general, simply because, there's a lot of sound you're not going to hear when it's coming out of speakers, either because it's too quiet or because you're not properly positioned. And I am very big on making sure that audio dramas are in as much 3D as I can. If you have everybody's voice right in the middle, for a book, that's fine because, you're still listening to a book, even if you have multiple voices. But for an audio drama, it sounds like they're all standing on each other's heads. You gotta move them at least a little bit out from center, even when they're having a close-up conversation. And this slider is the gain slider, which basically means the volume slider. I mean, there is I'm sure gain has differences from volume, but basically all it means to what we're doing is it louder or is it quieter? Is it louder? Is it quieter? It's plus or minus. It's pretty easy. If you accidentally move it, and you do have to keep an eye on these sometimes, you'll hear it, because it'll be louder or smaller. And if you can't get it back to 0 manually for whatever reason, you can double click on it and pull up this box and type in 0 and put it back to 0. Same with the left to right. If you're ever having trouble getting it right back to center where you want it. So now we have a drop-down menu, and there's a ton of stuff in here, a lot of which I don't use. Name. We're going to name a track. We'll name this one Titles. I think that was like the titles of some books I'd done. So very simply, this name is only for you. It can contain, generally, I think, whatever characters you want, because it has no significance to like saving files or stuff. I mean, okay, maybe it's changed, but I'm old school enough to remember when you couldn't use a lot of certain, oddball characters in file names without getting all sorts of computer errors or possible corruption. So again, that's why I use underscores a lot, is because I remember when you couldn't have a space, okay? I'm Aunt Julie. I'm not, young thing Julie. So, but here, these are just your own notes on what is in the track. You can put character names, etc., whatever it is. I mean, you've only got so much display area, and that's not going to change, so you got to make sure it's something you'll remember what it means. I mean, if you want to put in, this is Bob when he's in the restaurant, it'd be like, Bob eat, rather than restaurant Bob, because restaurant will take up your whole thing. Okay, these should be obvious. Move track up, move track down, track to top, track to bottom. Pretty simple. Look, I moved the track to the bottom. Now, this does help in certain ways. Like if you're, like with this, I would be processing each of these tracks as I went. I could move them down to the bottom when they're done. Or, for instance, and Control-Z is your friend. Or, for instance, if I want to match up two character voices because they're working together or they're talking together in a scene, I could move them so they're both down here together while I have sound effects and background noise and whatever else going on. just so that I have them close and I can see where the voices are in relation to each other. The next one's waveform, waveform, spectrograph, spectrogram. Okay, I don't do anything with these. I use the default, which is waveform. You also have waveform DB, which looks scary to me. You have spectrogram, which is so pretty. It looks like a bunch of trolls trying to hide behind, like troll dolls, hide behind a fence. And spectrogram settings, which just tells you how to change that up. I like looking at it this way because that's the way I'm used to looking at it. And to me, this allows it to be consistent and I can compare them to one another without having to, be weird. I've checked my 3D glasses at the door. Okay, so then down here, these are what you do with stereo tracks, which I'll show you in a minute. But first, now, in general, anytime you see numbers like this, the highest number is going to be the best quality. And you want to work with the best quality for as long as you can. So you just leave it where it is. Most of these I just leave where they are anyway. 44-100 is a general default. You will notice if you're doing audio dramas and you're having people record satellite recordings, sometimes they will output at a different level here. And when they do, when you input it, it comes in sounding weird. That's, again, why you always look at these numbers here to see if everything is the same. Whenever you're importing tracks. It doesn't happen an awful lot, but, every once in a while you'll get somebody who just output at a weird hertz or whatever, and so when you're importing it, it's weird. I've also had effects come in that way, which was really annoying, because you'll be like, oh, hey, you play it, you click on the file inside your directory, and it plays through like Windows Media Player, and it's like ding dong, and you're like, yay, that's exactly what I want. And you import it, and it's like ding 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 ding. You're like, what the hell happened? Or ding dong, and you're like, huh? Because while Windows Media Player adjusts for whatever output it was at, this doesn't, because it's trying to make everything consistent. Okay. Oh, back to the stereo stuff. When the stereo track looks like this, I just put these two together and made them a stereo track, which I don't like. Undo. And you can also, another way to make something into a stereo track is to move it to the left or right and then resave it, because then it'll have to show it off to the left or right, which means it has to create left and right tracks. I always work in mono tracks right up until I'm done for the most part, because, and you'll see it says mono here. That's why it's only got one track. If I did this, I take pan to the left and then I re-put it. Oh, no, that didn't work because it's my shortcut on my regular computer. Oh, jeez. See how easy it is to do that by mistake? If I go, okay, I'm going to make a stereo track. Oh, it won't let me. Well, now, apparently when you make stereo track, it wants to grab the one below it. Now, you don't see much because it didn't keep it to the left. Anyway, bad demonstration on that, but this is what a stereo track looks like. A lot of times, one of the things you'll see when I start working on actual tracks from the first season of Fatal Girl is that I've got one voice on one side and one voice on the other side, because I have a mixer that two microphones went into, and each microphone is more or less exempted from the other microphone track, and therefore they're very, very separate. But generally, the first thing I do with any stereo tracks is I either merge them into a single track, or I split them into 2 tracks, depending on if there's left and right, actual left and right stuff, or if it's just one voice in the middle of a stereo track. And I've got reasons for doing this. Partly it's just for visual cleanliness. It just looks a lot cleaner to me when all the tracks are relatively the same. Part of it is also because a stereo track can sometimes screw you up. It really sounds silly when, for instance, your special effect you import, you've got a stereo track. It's footsteps. If you put it on your headset, if you listen to it, you hear a step on the left and a step on the right, and a step on the left and a step on the right. Oh, well, that's nice, as long as you're walking down the center. But if you try to move it over to the right or anything, you'll hear a step over to the right and a step just in the middle, kind of where the left is kind of trying to go right. And you sound like you're straddling stuff as you walk. This is one of the biggest examples I ever had, was the footsteps. It drove me nuts until I figured out why it wasn't moving where I wanted it. And so anything like effects and stuff, I will make it all one. I'll make it all mono. Then I will manually move it left and right after I mix it. This is kind of a complicated process, but it is at its core a very simple one, because it's every step is kind of manual and simple. I'm sure there are people who are working in some of the more expensive, extensive audio processing programs who they can make all the movements and whatever they want in the stream and blah blah blah. But, I'm starting, I like the way this works. I like feeling like I have control over it. I'm sure I would like those programs too if I wanted to learn them, but I just don't want to bother. Ultimately. Okay, so we've looked at all this. Let's look up at the menus up here. File menu. New file. Pretty much the same as it is in any other program. Open. Same. Recent files. Same. Close, save project as, save other. That oh, well, that's good to look at. They don't have an export anymore, except over here. See, this is me exploring the new version. They change things every time, little things like this. Pardon me. Previously, there was an export in this file, in the file menu, but now it's over under save other. Export as MP3, export as WAV, export as OGG, blah, 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 etc., etc. Save compressed copy of project. Okay. Import allows you to bring a sound file into this screen here. Open allows you to open another sound file or an audio or an Audible project or an Audacity project in a screen of its own. Import brings it into this screen you're already working with. Audio, I worked with labels, MIDI, raw. I might play with that later. I haven't done much with chains yet. I might explore that now. Last time I tried to do chaining, it was pretty medieval, and well, that sounds weird coming with chains. Chaining, functionally, it allows you to set up a series of, from what I understand, it allows you to set up a series of processes that are to be performed in sequence, and then you can set it off with a single keystroke. And I haven't played with that because the last time I tried, it didn't work very well. But that was probably many, many iterations of the program back. I've been working in this program for over 10 years, so I've worked with a variety of different iterations of it, and I probably have many different iterations on all my different laptops. It gets like that. So that's why I get so surprised when I see something like this brand new version and the way they've set things up. So, it's a learning process for me too. Print. I don't know what we're printing. Huh. Print what? Okay. And exit the program, of course. Under edit, we have, this is a general undo. Pan was the last thing I did, which was moving that bottom track from side to side, which is Control Z, of course, undo. It just shows you the latest thing you did, which is kind of nice if you can't remember what the latest thing you did was. It's like, did I already do that to that track? Come back here. Oh, yeah, I did. Redo actually is do the same thing again, generally in the same place. There's also a repeat choice, which we'll get to, which allows you to do the same thing to in multiple places, one after another. As I said, can cut, delete, well, Control K, I guess I never used that as delete, but copy, paste, duplicate. Duplicate is a very handy one. I'll do that in a minute. Remove special, I haven't really used much except silence audio. Silence is good. Clip boundaries, no. Labels I use sometimes, and preferences. We're going to get to preferences. Duplicate is Control D, and basically what it does is it makes a duplicate of whatever you just highlighted. There's a number of places I use duplicate, a lot actually, but you know it's a very simple one. And Control L, silence, just blanks out whatever you've got highlighted. Again, Control Z is your friend. Silence is fine. You know, if you want to get rid of someone like this crap between words that you know is just mouth noise or whatever. If you hear like some junk in the background, heavy breathing, that's me all the time. You know, you can silence it out. I actually am going to be changing some of these shortcut keys, and we'll get to that when I get to preferences. So select all, none, tracks, region, spectral, clip boundaries. Yeah, basically I use all or none. I don't use a lot of the functions of Audacity, which is even weirder considering the volume of things I produce. But, you know, you use what you use. Zoom in, zoom out. I mostly just use these keys. There's zoom out, zoom in, put it all in the screen, and then the other one here is make selection fit in the screen. So if you have a small portion you want to make bigger, you just highlight it, and it's actually Control E. I do use that one a lot. View, that's zoom. Track size, fit to width is Control F, like I said, fit all in screen. Fit to height, collapse tracks, skip, history, karaoke. A lot of this stuff, again, I just never use. Reset toolbars lets you change your toolbars around. That's fine. And show clipping I probably should use, but I don't. Clipping is when a voice that has been, when a recording goes out of the lines, essentially. Like, you look at how tall some of these are. Now, I record quiet. I record at a relatively low level of input so that when I get noisy, it doesn't clip. If I took that shortcuts and I say amplified it by 5 and made it the size of this, you'll see now that the ends go off the screen, off the edges. That often happens when you're doing really loud noises, really loud talking, when you do screaming, and it's not good because it's damaging the sound. It's cutting off parts of it, even if it's just the tips of the wavelength. So, you know, a lot of that, again, you have to avoid clipping in your original recording because it's harder to fix than it is to do right the first time. There is a repair tool that's marginal in here. It could be better now. Again, new version. But generally speaking, you're really better off if you just avoid the clipping in the first place. So, That was view, right? Yeah. Transport, play, record. I don't know, scrubbing cursor to. I don't have to deal with that. Okay, more stuff I don't use. Tracks. Add new mix. Mix I use a lot. Pardon me. Mix and render. That's where instead of turning these two tracks into a stereo track like this, it would, if I mix and render them, it turns them into a stereo track where they're all in the same place. You know, if I did that again, but I made them left and right, you'd see more difference. Whoops. Because you'd see that some things are more up here where it's left and some things are more down here where it's right. It's, you know, it's a step I take in most processes. It just doesn't happen to be useful right now. Remove tracks, pretty easy. Delete, mute, unmute, pan, align tracks, sort tracks. I hope the alignment works again because it has not worked for me for a while. I mean, for recent versions. I don't use a lot of the generates, even though it sounds like it works, but I haven't really messed with it. Now to the effects. And there's a lot of plugins I never use. Maybe I know what they mean, maybe I don't. But I do know I never use them. I'm going to go into the Add Remove Plugins menu. Plugins. Let's plug it in, plug it in. Make it a little bigger so we're not looking at 5 at a time. Ooh, classic filters. What's that? It's the danger of a new version. Auto duck. I never use that, so I'll disable it. I don't know what bass and treble is. I'm going to disable it. Beat finder. I mean, a lot of this is stuff that would be used for mixing music, which is something I'm not doing. So I get rid of things I don't use because then it clears up my list and I don't have to go scrolling all over the place to find things. They're not gone. They're still here. I could always enable them again when I need them. But that's why you have a plugin manager, so you can go in there and check things out. Click removal, clip fix. That'd be for clipping. I don't like their compressor. Crossfade clips, I do it manually. Crossfade tracks, I do that manually. DTMF tones, don't care. Delay, distortion, echo. I play with those every once in a blue moon, but not very much. Fade in and fade out I actually use a lot. Find clipping, I'm not going to keep. High pass filter, we're going to talk about this in about 5 minutes before I close out for tonight. Invert can be interesting, but not really. I mean, actually, I don't even know what invert does. It's one of those annoying things. Doesn't seem to do anything. Limiter, I don't like their limiter. Low pass filter, noise, don't need. Noise reduction is fine. Normalize, I don't want. Notch filter. I keep thinking I need to use a notch filter, but I can't remember why. Nyquist prompt, I think it takes you into a whole new set of plugins that I don't know how to use. Paul Stretch. The hell's that? Oh well. Phaser, I've never really used. Pluck, I've never really used. Regular interval labels. I guess that makes sense. Repair, repeat, reverb, reverse rhythm track. No. Risset drum. No. SC4. Sample data export. See, there's a lot of, I just get rid of a lot of the things that because I never ever use them, they would just be sitting there on my desktop going, Why aren't you using your laptop? Silence is good. Silence finder. Don't think I need. Anyway, so there's a lot of things like this in here that are going to be a pain in the butt if I don't get rid of them. I'll leave that for now. But one of the things that this does is when you open your effects menu, things are more tightly packed, so that they're closer. The things you use are close together instead of having to scroll down several screens to get that far. Okay. Analyze, I very seldom use, and help, I really don't use. So that's a basic tour around the place. When I do start working on tracks, the first thing I do, actually the very first thing I do when I have a raw track like 2/4 is I save it. I save as. And the reason why is because this is part of my pattern. I save it as 2/4 HN. HN means high pass and noise removal in my lexicon. Because I have screwed up the high pass and I have screwed up the noise removal, and always keeping the previous iteration at a certain point makes it so if I do screw up, I have something to back up to, as opposed to having to back all the way through Audacity and then find out I saved the file. So, okay, first thing is a high pass filter. Oh, actually no. Well, yeah, I'll talk about changing shortcut keys probably tomorrow, because right now I don't really have enough time to go through all of those. Shortcut keys are very useful and very simple, and they're here in the Edit Preferences menu. You can go to Keyboard and then designate as many things to happen on shortcut keys as you want. And since it drives me crazy not to have my shortcuts, I will be doing that tomorrow. But so I've saved this file as 2/4 HN, and I can take the effect of the high pass filter. I set it to 300. 300 is my generic default for a high pass filter. Now, what a high pass filter does, okay, because it's important to know why you're doing things and why they do what they do. A high pass filter lets high notes pass and cuts out low notes. Now, 300 is a very low bar to cut out very low notes. It's generally not going to have much effect on any higher voices. If you're dealing with somebody who has a really deep voice, you don't want to run it this high. You want to run it at like 100 or something. But the big thing that the high pass filter is going to do is it's going to take out that computer hum. It's going to take out the hum of whatever's in your walls. It's going to take out the lower notes from the traffic outside your window. It's going to take out all those things because it's letting all the high notes pass and cutting out all the low notes. Now, there is also a low pass filter, which allows all the low notes to pass and cuts out high things. It's very, very basic. But the high pass filter, the biggest thing it does is it gives you it just sort of cleans everything up. Takes the grime off it. All the buzz, the room tone, the computer noise, half of your breathing is gone after that. It just really helps the cleanup process. Because once you've taken all that out, then you can come and show your parents. I don't know. That you can show whoever. Oh, Lord, I was off on a tangent there. I had a specific thing I was working on in mind, and it doesn't make any sense to explain it right now. No, it basically, what it allows you to do is it takes out enough sound so that the next step, I'm still going, what was my brain doing? The next step, the noise reduction step, is going to be significantly easier. because what this is doing is it's taking out this under level of grime, say. I mean, if for instance, you're looking at a parfait, it's taking out that bottom level of, I don't know, Oreo cookie crumbs or something. Don't do parfait. But either way, it's basically just wiping out the lowest level so that the amount of noise that needs to be removed is actually significantly less. So we're going to run the high pass filter. Woohoo, it ran. And you'll see that it kind of cinched up and it becomes a little more symmetrical. And that's one way to look at a file and go, I don't know, did I do a high pass filter yet? This is not very up and down symmetrical. It's much heavier on the low end, of course. So I should do a high pass filter. Once you've done one, you can go Effect, Repeat High Pass Filter. Or you can just hit Control R, which is the key for repeat. And you'll see the box come up so you know it's repeating. Now, I actually changed the repeat key for myself because I like it as a one stroke. Because I often do a lot of repeated effects. I mean, a lot of repeated processing like that. And instead of having to hit Control every time, I want to be able to hit Q. That's just me. So everything's been high pass filtered. It doesn't take long. It is generally a fairly simple program. So the next point is to find at least 6 seconds of clean space. The reason to do this is your noise removal needs a sample. The sample has to be part of your recording, and it has to be as clean as possible. Because what the noise removal basically does is it goes, okay, I'm going to listen to every speck of sound in the sample, and then every speck of sound that matches any of those specks, I'll pull out of the final track. The problem is if you've got extra specks in there that you didn't really want, then your track ends up sounding choppy because it's pulling out more than you actually wanted. That's why you have to get as close and tight a sample as possible. So the first thing I do is I duplicated this section of this file down here, and now I'm deleting anything where I can see the sound. Okay, oops. Oh no, I didn't set the audio. Okay. What I'm doing now, though, is, as I said, I'm removing all the sound from this copied track, from this extra track. I started mind wandering again. It's been one of those days. It's going to happen a lot in the winter. Hopefully we'll have people to chat with to help me stay awake. Okay. I don't have to take every little speck away. I mean, ultimately I will, but it saves time if you don't. So I'm going to duplicate that again. And now, on the higher one, I'm going to volume it up. I'm going to amplify that. Okay, effects, amplify. And, yes. Now, whenever you amplify, you'll see that this box here comes up with a default number. And that default number is the distance from the highest point in your selected track to the top. To the, it's from the top of this little thing all the way up to here. That's how much you can amplify it before it hits the edge. That's why you usually leave the allow clipping off, because that way you know you're not going to go outside the edge because it won't allow clipping. So we're 36.714 from the edge. So we're going to say okay and let it do this. Now see, this is what I mean when I say, oops, wrong one. You've got, it's all very easy for this to look blank, but look at how many spiky noises are actually in there, even though it looks blank. Well, said, well, whoops. My brain went off on a tangent again. I think I'm a little tired. Good thing I'm almost done with this. Do keep me on track, help me to make sense. Basically, though, I will use that as a guide track now that I've volumed up my duplicate track. Use it as a guide track to delete every extra noise from my non-guide track. And hopefully you come up with at least 5 or 6 seconds at the end. Now, looking up at here, we're looking at, well, 20 seconds maybe. Well, that's plenty, more than plenty. The goal is to get a hold of more than 5 that are cleaned. Now, if you can't get 5 that are cleaned, then you can fake it around a little bit. Okay, so now it's at 28. I'm going to highlight it again. Well, now it's just a couple of peaks that are holding it up, but there's also big, broad areas. So I would take it from here and here for sure, and remove this part. And actually at this point, I think I would get rid of that. So I can bring this, highlight, bring it back out to the width of the screen and see where these spikes are. It seems a tedious process, but once you've got the exemplar you're using, once I've got that lower track cleared as much as possible so that it's as clean a sound sample as possible, that will work on any recordings made the same day of this or in the same circumstances. I have a studio set up. It's a walk-in closet that I've turned into my audio studio. It has all my personal stuff, so it's obviously my space and it's obviously a studio. But that means that anything I record in there will have almost, 87 to 99% sure that everything there will have the same sound. But you record people from outside and everywhere around, you're going to get a different sound. And you have to do this process individually for each set of sounds, or you can mess it up. I mean, just last week I had 2 dude voices in a track of something I was listening to. But basically, so then once I've got this, and as I said, I want to get at least 5 minutes. I've obviously got more than that. Then, wait a minute. I guess that's just a smudge on the screen that you're probably not seeing. Okay, so once I've got this and it's fairly clean, I mean, I could go round again also if I wanted to. Effect, amplify. What? Oh, yeah, I gotta select it. How silly. I'll wrap this up in just a minute because my time is up. Oh, no. Weird. Okay. Screw it. I'm just gonna... screw it. That's just the way I'm gonna deal with it. Well, if I bring it back out to full width here, then I'm going to trigger off my noise removal. I have been getting really spacey today. I think I'm going to have to make sure I get more sleep by next time. And I go to noise reduction. Under noise reduction, there's this box. It says get noise profile. Yes, I will. And then you go to the once you've got that sample accepted, do it again just to make sure, because it's been a crazy week and it's only Monday. So here it says is that Where's the 1,000? I don't know what it means actually. Yeah, I'm definitely getting out of here because I am getting punky and choppy. You never run noise reduction on your sound exemplar. So we're just going to get noise profile and let it be. Then we're going to... Okay. I've got my noise exemplar. This is the last thing I'm going to do before I hang up. And I'll go back up here because I did do a high pass filter on this one. If you do the high pass filter, then you get your noise exemplar. Make sure you're only using it on tracks that you've already done the high pass filter on. This is why I call this HN, high pass filter noise removal, because that way I can remember what I was doing, what order I'm doing it in, and why I'm doing it. Okay, so we'll take that one and we'll look for... I'm not sure which ones I'm adding. Well, we'll just go to noise removal. Noise reduction, my bad. Here at this, we can... Got it highlighted. And this time, you don't want to say get noise profile again, or else you'll be getting a noise profile with a lot of stuff in it. So you're going to go OK, because that's when it runs the noise profile and takes out the noise between the words. And that is where I'm going to leave it for today, because I am starting to get really spacey, and I apologize for that, and I hope that this is a good beginning on how to make this work. Once I've got these basics down, and once I get my shortcut keys all programmed in, which I will do on screen because programming the shortcut keys is obviously very handy for everyone, I will start to work on real files for Fatal Girl. As I said, this was just sample files for the moment. Thank you all for listening, and I hope that you got something from this, whether you did it on Twitch or on YouTube. And let's hope I can make this work further, and perhaps not be quite so spacey next time.